Hello, everybody, and welcome on this rather somber day. Thank you for joining us for certainly a very topical webinar, Cutting Through the Chaos, Understanding the Current Crisis. We're very grateful that you joined us, and we're very grateful for our panel. We do have quite a lot to say, and time is short, so I'm going to, without any further ado, hand you over to your host for the day, Professor Karen Milner.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. And sorry, I'm going to put my phone on silent. I just realized my phone's not on silent. Apologies. So very, very good evening to everybody, and particularly to our panelists. We have a very large number of people who have registered for this webinar. On the one hand, we're very gratified to have such a large audience. On the other hand, I think we all agree and we all wish that it hadn't been necessary. But we are very aware of the concerns and the anxiety of the country and in particular of our community. And we felt that it would be really important that we speak to our community, that we give people information, and that we manage that anxiety and the conditions that we find ourselves in as well as possible. So I'd really also at the outset, because I know many of our panelists have been asked to come at very short notice and are going to need to hop off the call before it's over. So I'm going to start, instead of ending with thanking my panelists, I'm going to start with thanking this really esteemed group of people who I'm seeing in front of me. Thank you so much for agreeing at such late notice to come on this panel and for sharing your expertise with us. It's been a very, very rough year. I don't think that anyone can deny that we've had a really rough year this year, not just for South Africa, but for the world. At the beginning of the year, the end of last year, we started with watching in absolute disbelief as really we've seen some of the worst of human nature around the world come into the fore. We started watching in disbelief as Americans rioted and attempted to storm Capitol Hill. And that's kind of, where some of this, what we've seen in the world. We've watched absolutely gobsmacked more recently as soccer hooligans degenerated into racism and also appalling behavior. We've seen that happening as they lost the European Championship. So we are certainly seeing, unfortunately, a pattern of behavior around the world that is showing us some of the really negative sides of human nature. And unfortunately, as often in our beautiful country, we are seeing these patterns just happening more harshly and more acutely in what's happening at the moment in South Africa. So we have all watched in absolute horror. We have all watched in absolute horror as the fans fanned by those with political motives have taken hold and are burning across our country. We've also been subject to an absolute barrage of false news, alarmist messaging, race-baiting voice notes designed to play into this agenda. Tonight, we have put together what I think is an outstanding panel of experts in this area who will address and assess our security concerns across the wider South Africa, as well as within our own community. We'll address the issues of false news that has come through and that continue to come through both in our community and across South Africa. We will talk about the security concerns that those in our neighborhoods, our communities, and our countries have, and how to perhaps deal with some of those security concerns. And we'll end with a message of hope and resilience for these difficult times. So without further ado, I'm going to start with introducing Dr. Johan Burger, and once again, thanking him for giving of his time. Dr. Burger is a consultant with the Institute for Security Studies in Pretoria and is attached to the Justice and Violence Prevention Program. We really look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you, Dr. Burger.
Thank you, Professor Milner. Thank you for an introduction as well. I haven't prepared a formal presentation, but as you will appreciate, I've been involved in discussing what's happening in our country at the moment with a range of media houses, TV, printed media, radio, and so on. And of course, within our program at the Institute, we've already also had in-depth discussions about what is happening, how we should look at this, and the various interpretations that one can add to this situation. So without going back into the history of all, and just by way of introduction, and if there are any questions and you would allow me to address those questions before I leave, I will do that. Of course, I'm due for other media interviews after my brief stay with your webinar. But all of this, in a way, started with the arrest of Mr. Zuma on last week, I think Thursday or Friday, and the first signs that violence is about to happen was on Saturday when those trucks were burned in the Mooi River area in KZN. And I think this quickly expanded to other areas within KZN, and not too long after that we saw this also spilling over into Gauteng. And I think at this time these are the two provinces mostly affected by the violence and the looting that had taken place since Saturday. There are, of course, in some of the other provinces or also in isolated places, signs of this thing happening there as well. But at this time, it seems to be largely happening in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. So, of course, the president addressed us on Monday, giving us his sober interpretation of what is happening, and that this kind of violence and damage to infrastructure, that the destruction that we've seen and the criminality will not be tolerated, and that he's given instructions to the security services to deal with the situation. And then this morning, we had a briefing by the JCPS cluster, the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster ministers, and we were briefed, especially by the ministers of police and defense. And I must say that the impressions, before I analyze what these ministers told us this morning, I do get the impression that finally there seems to be movement in terms of a more appropriate response by the security services. And these are both the police, the military, and the intelligence agencies, and also include the Metropolitan Police Services and all law enforcement agencies. It's just a pity that it took us until Tuesday before we saw this kind of response by the relevant ministers. They were very, very quiet until now. And also the response by the police appeared, from what we saw on the news, the various programs on television, social media. The response by the police appeared to be extremely slow and inappropriate. It didn't look like they expected what was happening. It didn't look like they were ready to deal with it. And where they were present in very, very small numbers, confronted by very, very large crowds of people, carrying away stolen goods from various shops, including some of our bigger shopping centers. And the biggest criticism against the police came from people who were saying that the police appeared to be inactive. They appeared to be looking on while all of this looting was taking place without doing anything. Now, the response by the minister, and I have some sympathy with him in terms of his response. It's another matter whether we agree with this or not, but his response was that with so few police officers at some of these scenes of looting, it was impossible for them to intervene. For one, they ran the risk of being attacked themselves by such a large crowd of people who were so intent on stealing that they wouldn't allow a small group of police to interfere with what they were doing. Secondly, those police officers appeared not to properly understand what they should do. Either act or then don't be there at all. But so the other part of the minister's explanation was that police officers are no longer allowed, where there is looting, to use live ammunition. And we know that is the case. We have constitutional court judgments in this regard. So they can use any other kind of weapon as long as it's non-lethal. But ordinary police officers from the police stations are normally not equipped with these alternative weapons. They only have the ordinary sidearms, and from time to time you would find vehicles with R4, I5 rifles. So these are not the kind of weapons you use during events such as this, where you are confronted with large crowds of people. The question then is, where were the public order police units? And many police stations have trained trained police officials trained in public order policing and with the necessary equipment. So that brings us back to this morning's briefing, where the Minister of Police told us, and he was supported by the Minister of Intelligence, who told us that they have had good intelligence all along. And this was passed on to the police, who claimed that they were able to speedily react on the basis of the intelligence. Now, I find this very, very difficult to believe, because if they really had the kind of intelligence that they claim to have, and if they acted very, very speedily, we did not see that in terms of the images that ran across our television sets for the last 2 days, 3 days. We didn't see it. So I don't know where they speedily reacted to, but we are very, very critical of those claims and of the responses by the police. But as I said, be that as it may, it's difficult. It's easy now to judge the past and to be critical of the past, but we have to deal with the situation that we have at the moment. And the situation now is that there is clear movement in terms of the intelligence community now spreading their field cover in terms of informers, agents, in an attempt to gather the necessary intelligence for further actions by the security forces. As far as the police are concerned, they are now strengthened in 2 ways. First, there's an instruction that cancelled all leave within the police service. So more members available now from the cancelled leave, as well as from members performing administrative duties. Police members have now been made available for operational duties, and then strengthened also by the 2,500 soldiers from the SANDF that were deployed since yesterday and this morning to support the police. So there is now clear movement in terms of gathering useful intelligence, useful for operational purposes that is, and also then for the operational deployment of the joint forces. And hopefully we'll see an impact over the next 2-3 days There is also, and this is my last point, and then you're welcome to ask me questions. I'm just giving a very, very brief summary of all of what is happening. There has been also information shared with us that in addition to what the security services are doing, they've also now involved the prosecution services, who will work very, very closely with the police and the intelligence community in terms of identifying those persons and organizations that appear to be involved in orchestrating much of what happened, both in terms of the Zuma support group and their initiatives that developed into acts of violence and disruption and so forth. And also there appears to be some orchestration as far as the looting situation is concerned as well. And so a lot of the investigations, along with the support of the prosecution services, are aimed at dealing with those persons and organizations identified in this way, and then also dealing with the spread of fake news that certainly is aggravating the situation as we see it. So I'm hopeful that with the new focus on the security services, intelligence, prosecuting services, that we'll see much better impact on the ongoing violence and looting that is taking place. Professor Mulder, thank you. I'm open for questions. Before I will ask you to please excuse me.
Thank you so much. I really think that you concisely got across and really put across the idea that while we all did witness so little action coming forward, but somewhat reassured that certainly police forces and government forces are mobilizing. Unfortunately, we don't have time to ask the questions live now. We're running out of time for our next speakers, but we do have some questions on the chat, and I was wondering, Dr. Berger, if you wouldn't mind, if you have a minute, to look on the chat before you leave and perhaps choose one or two of those questions if you wouldn't mind answering. Which brings me very quickly to my next speaker, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Braude. Dr. Braude has a PhD in journalism and is a part-time lecturer at Wits University in the School of Journalism and Media Studies. And her research work very topically focuses on interpersonal violence and media representations of violence. And I'm really looking forward to what you have to say. Thank you, Dr. Braude.
Thank you so much, and thanks for giving us a place to talk about this. And it was great to be able to listen to Johan speak beforehand. And I think all of us, and I include myself in this, have to understand that if the police intelligence and if national intelligence agencies didn't have a good handle on it, it's very unlikely that somebody on WhatsApp who you don't know has secret information that they were unaware of. And it's a constant reminder to all of ourselves to be a little bit more humble in our own self-assessed abilities to process this kind of information when it's coming at us really fast. And also to understand that false information is not new. It's been around in human society for as long as human society has been around. The Jewish community should know about this very strongly because, you know, information was quickly circulated about Jewish communities, which would lead other people to come and attack Jews where they lived. What we see now with social media is that false information just travels a lot faster. So it's the same phenomena that we've seen for generations. It just happens at a very accelerated speed. And yeah, I'm going to pass on some advice that I think some of the panel will be familiar with, but some advice that I've received in the last few years, which is to panic slowly. And I'm going to repeat that again as I talk. But when you receive information on social media, on WhatsApp, and again, I experienced this too over the last few days, and I do genuinely have a very good network of contacts who work in the police services, who consult with the military, and who work with community security. And even me, I felt overwhelmed by the amount of information that I was being sent, and that the overwhelming sensation makes us panic. And so I just want to talk very quickly about why we share information as we receive it, even if we don't know if it's true. What are the consequences of that information, and what should we be doing to disrupt those processes rather than be a part of them? And just to say to everybody who is watching and listening tonight, that most of us, the reason why we share this information is not malicious. We are mostly not the kind of the malefactors on the, and there are genuinely people who just want to stir trouble. Or who have other more divisive, desires. Politicians do this a lot, propagandists. But most of us share this kind of information because we're worried. We're worried that our friends, that our family members might be vulnerable. And that fear kind of causes like a short circuit in our processes, the way we think through things. So when we are in a place of emotion, when we are feeling fear, when we're feeling panic, we don't count to 10, we don't pause, we don't panic slowly, we respond from fear, and then we just press send, we press forward, we share the information because we're worried that if somebody doesn't know that, there may be a harm to them. Unfortunately, what happens is that in that sharing process, people actually prey on our vulnerability as humans. They prey on that desire to actually help other people, to want to share information. And they exploit that because they know that we won't always check it, particularly when we're afraid. And the thing that we're very much seeing on social media now is fear creates fear. So the more we panic, the more we feel panicked. If you're able to step back from that moment of panic, even for a few minutes, maybe a little bit longer, you can process the information much more reasonably and take a more rational approach. And this actually applies to first responders too, whether you're a security first responder or a medical first responder. If you panic in a situation, you can't deal with it appropriately. So panic slowly. When you receive a message on social media or you see something on Twitter, on Facebook, or on WhatsApp that causes a strong emotional response, always count to 10. Think it through before sharing. And that includes racist information and things that play into our stereotypes or prejudices. We're already seeing that. The reason why people are happy to share messages that are negative about other race groups or other religions is because it confirms what they already secretly feel or believe. So it's easy to share something that sort of, conforms with our pre-existing prejudices and beliefs. So anything that makes you feel smug, angry, upset, afraid, or panicking, that's always a really good sign to pause when you receive that information before doing anything with it. The second thing is, what are the consequences of this kind of information? So it's just information. How does it harm anybody? But the thing is, when we cry wolf or when we share information that is panicky, like yesterday, all the claims that all of the shopping malls in Joburg and Sandton and Hyde Park were about to be under attack, what happens is it can divert resources away from the people who really need it. So we might be sending police officers or first responders to a shopping mall that isn't in trouble. And that means the people who really need the attention are not able to receive it at the right time. So that's one of the immediate consequences of sharing false information. But there's a longer term consequence, which is that it perpetuates harmful stereotypes. And what we are seeing now is the result of fragmentation of community and, helping each other. And when we share panicky, fear-driven information that perpetuates negative stereotypes around people, it also makes it really hard to rebuild. And that is very much what we are going to need to move into very quickly, is not just rebuilding our economy, but rebuilding trust, because there is no ways that even if the entire Jewish community joins hands, if we do not extend our hands beyond our community, we will not have fixed anything. And I think everybody listening and watching will know and understand that deeply, but it has to involve fixing that trust amongst everybody. The last thing that I'll say is, how do we find reputable information? And this is a challenge, okay? For me, working as a journalist, as a researcher who works in violence, and as a member of the community who participates, is I don't trust myself. So my advice to everybody would be, don't trust yourself to always be the arbiter of what's right or what's wrong. Phone a friend. And by phone a friend, I mean consult with other people who are experts and who might know better. So if I have questions about the community, I would consult the CSO. If I have questions about broader security issues, I would consult the ISS. And I've done this in the past when I've come across information online claiming to be about child kidnappings. If everybody remembers the Great Panic of 2019 or 28, whenever it was the last time, all those videos going around, I contacted colleagues at the ISS because I think these are people who are experts, who have their fingers on the pulse of what's actually going on and who explain it in a calm and rational way. So don't trust your own sort of ability to process the information. Look for the helpers who understand this information and who can contextualize it for you. You can also look for some journalists, not all journalists, unfortunately, but there are some journalists, and there are thankfully many of them, who are credible and who take the time to verify their information. Look for journalists who are in the field or at a location, not somebody who is reporting from a computer or from a cell phone about something they may have heard via WhatsApp. Also look at organizations like Africa Check. They do a regular job of updating and correcting hoaxes, correcting false information. And they can also be very useful when you need to reply to a friend or family member who sent you something misleading or false and you want to correct them. So I've found in my experience, even though as my family knows, I'm never wrong and I know everything, the rest of the world doesn't seem to take their word for it. So it's hard to kind of verify that. I found that sharing links from reputable organizations like Africa Check has been very helpful to correct other people when they don't believe me. And if they really don't believe me, then I just tell them Mandy Wiener said it, and then they believe me. So Mandy's another good source to follow. Mandy's a friend and a colleague, and a lot of people trust her. And so Mandy, I know, takes the time to really think through the information that she shares. Another thing is that we should all be willing to correct ourselves. It's not ideal. So my recommendation to members of the press when I train journalists is it's better to be second and right than first and wrong. Because what we know and what we can see from this is that bad information can spread like wildfire. In fact, it's bad information that started this in the first place. It was bad information that lit the match and dropped it into a pile of human kindling that was already very vulnerable. We need to break that chain. We need to create fire breaks in our information system. So it's better not to send it first before you know it's accurate. Don't contribute to the panic. Panic slowly. But if you do make a mistake, correct it. Don't be embarrassed. I'm not too embarrassed to say when I was wrong, to delete something that I said that was wrong, to publish a correction, and to share accurate information. So I think that should be, the onus is on all of us to be responsible adults, even in this terrifying time, is only share what you know to be true, because otherwise we kind of contribute to a very, very panicky situation. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Braude. I think that advice was remarkable. Firstly, it's good advice. Generally, I think panic slowly as we go forward. One of the positive things that's going to come out of this whole crisis is a bit of advice that I'm going to keep forever, which is panic slowly. I'm sure there are very many Jewish mothers on this webinar, and I think it's particularly good advice to all of us. So a tremendous thank you to you for a really helpful and useful way of addressing the information that we're getting. And very clear direction on how to go about it. Thank you so much, Dr. Braude. I'm going to carry on quickly because, again, we have a very, very full schedule. I'd like to introduce, the next person I'm going to introduce is Dr. Gelbart. Dr. Gelbart is the chairman of the Gauteng CSO. And without any further ado, thank you so much again. I know you are busy as well, for contributing and for being on here. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this distinguished panel. You really haven't left me much to say. We've had two brilliant speakers who have summarized the situation. Hold on one second while. The challenges of doing webinars from home. So, yeah, I mean, certainly a great synopsis of the politics and the issues behind this, which I'm not going to get into. It's not my place to. And I think Nechama really summed up the pearls and pitfalls of social media and one of the challenges we find today. Why the CSO here? Well, and why are we part of this webinar? And the CSO's mandate is to protect Jewish life and Jewish way of life. And although I represent Johannesburg, the CSO is a national organization with teams in Johannesburg, Pretoria, Durban, Cape Town, and there's communities all over the country. And it's our responsibility to look after each and every Jew and to be partners with them and help them and us look after ourselves. And so when we get into a situation where we are like this, it's not the usual anti-Semitism and terrorism, but our security and safety is paramount. This environment that we find ourselves in is a challenge. It's a challenge because it's widespread. it's fairly unpredictable. And there's a lot of, as Nechama said, fear-mongering, so a lot of misinformation. And as the Chinese say, kill one, frighten 10,000. I think send one SMS and you do the same thing these days. And our role really is to work together with the community, to empower everybody, to be able to look after themselves, to avoid getting into trouble, and to safely see through this period. What are we doing? Well, the important thing for us is to communicate with the community, to look after our resources. At the moment, our shuls, our schools are closed. We don't have many communal functions, but in our communities are resources that we need to look after. We need to ensure that our supermarkets, our restaurants are protected. We need to ensure that the community knows where to go, where not to go. And we need to ensure that we feel safe in our environment. In order to do that, we're partnering with the board, with other communal organizations, to communicate to everybody that this too, please God, will pass. In the meantime, we need to remain safe, we need to look after ourselves, we need to communicate efficiently and effectively with each other, and we need to make sure that we don't panic, even if we panic slowly, that we don't panic. So I'm not going to talk for very long, other than to say, we are the community. There are many people on this call. Each one of us has got information. Each one of us has got situations they're worried about. The CSO is there for you. We have a control room in Johannesburg. We have a control room in Cape Town. Our numbers 086 18 000 18. And you can call that any time, day or night, in order to give us information, in order to ask us about any information that you want to verify. As Nechama said, we're more than happy to be part of that. And if you find yourself in a situation that you aren't comfortable in, then please feel free to contact us to help you get out of it. We work closely with SAPS, with CAP, with other security providers, and we want to try and tell people as much as possible to avoid getting into trouble. And if you are in trouble, de-escalate, move yourself to a safe place, and contact somebody who can help you. And we're available for you. So I'll leave it there, Karen, and take questions if you want.
Thanks so much, Brad. I'll see if as questions come up, hopefully, again, if you could also just keep an eye on the chat and see if there's anything that you can want to respond to on the chat. I see one question. We've got a minute for you. Have you seen any vigilante groups emerging, anything like that?
So fortunately, in our environment, we haven't had many of those, and we haven't had the need for that. But if one looks at KZN in particular, where there's a number of suburbs involved, then a lot of private security companies, community police forums, community organizations are the ones who are unfortunately have been putting up blocks and security systems. Hopefully we don't get to that point in Joburg. Hopefully now that we've got a response, as mentioned by Dr. Berger earlier, things will calm down. And should things come into our areas, obviously everyone thinks of Den Hazel being the Jewish community, but we look after the community all over Sandton, Wendywood, Victory Park, all over. We will work with the relevant people to ensure that our community are safe. Just remember that generally the safest place is in your own home, behind locked doors, and with communication. So a well-charged cell phone is something useful to have, and it keeps you safe from COVID and from other things outside. So for the time being, it's a good place to be. Stay safe, and if you need anything, give us a call.
Thanks so much. I see that the CSO control room number is up on the chat for anybody who wants to use it. And thank you again, Brad, for agreeing to be on here and for sharing with us your expertise. I'm now going to move straight along to Mr. Sean Jammy, Again, thank you for joining us. Sean Jamie is the CEO of the Community Active Protection, much better known as CAP. Over to you, Mr. Jamie. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I notice some dismay that I'm not, I think I'm one of the only people in this chat without a prof, a rabbi, or a doctor behind my name. Anyways, I think I can sort of follow on from what Brad said, and there'll be some duplication. I think our messages are largely the same. I'd like to cover a little bit more about CAP, give some idea of what the current status is, and then make some recommendations. I think the most important thing that I can say, though, is there haven't been any reported incidents of civil unrest related criminality within any of our areas. It hasn't happened, okay? And we're working very closely with the various state and security forces to restore order on a more global Johannesburg-wide level. So what the CAP areas mean is it's kind of an area from Houghton and Westcliff in the south through to Bryanston in the north, and then Dunvegan, Edenvale area in the east through to Victory Park and Emmarentia in the west. And what CAP does throughout this footprint and extended is we collect as much information as we can. We like to understand as much about the threat of crime. And indeed, these civil unrest related incidents are criminal. They're criminal incidents. Understand as much as we can, and then use that understanding to deploy an appropriate response. So yeah, as a result of CAP, what is pretty amazing is we've got 500 appropriately armed and equipped operational members. We've got 100 vehicles, and we've got this significant support system that we can deploy to meet this challenge. So we've been investigating all of this data, and a big part of that is debriefing anyone who reports an incident firsthand. And obviously try and interrogate other sources, whether it's WhatsApp, whether, we all know how many sources there are, in as much as possible. And that information drives the deployment of our personnel. And we've got, two types of personnel. We've got the routine personnel, which are the vehicles and these amazing guys that we see patrolling our communities and our suburbs. And then we've got a whole bunch of special intervention type of guys, the more advanced guys, the dog teams, and the teams that we will deploy with a specific mission in mind. The challenges that we faced, and I mean, Nechama really, she summarized it well. It's extremely difficult with the amount of fake news out there, okay? And I just wanted to give you an example. I mean, just today, I had someone that refused to believe that Clicks in Balfour hadn't been looted, and I was standing in front of it, okay? They just could not believe that it hadn't been looted. We had reports of 4 malls being attacked when all they were doing was closing as a precautionary measure, and that was within, half an hour. And then, the doozy was about half an hour ago, I had someone phoning me, a close friend, worried about not having a safe room and asking if she should come to Biyachad, okay, and Allah will fetch her from there if and when an issue occurred. And it just really hit home how much, and I get the madness, I get how people are anxious, but the anxiety is really driven by the amount of information that's thrown at us and the volume of inaccurate and really out there stuff that we have at our disposal. Notwithstanding all of this, I think, what I need to do is set people's minds at ease. The current situation is volatile, but we're absolutely sure that we have the necessary precautions in place, and we're optimistic that we will see a significant de-escalation in the next few days. The army has been deployed in Alex, and we've already, over the last sort of 12 to 18 hours, seen a quietening down of reports outside CAP areas. Of course, we recommend that people are sensibly cautious. And once again, I love that panic slowly term. I'm going to steal it, I think. But it's really just be sensible about it, okay? Call in suspicious activity. I've obviously had to punt the CAP number, but you're welcome to call any communal organization, any security company. Tell someone, create an alert. We'd love you to tell us on 0861 227 227, but you're more than welcome to let the CSO know. As Brad said, we work really well together. Make sure your gates are closed and locked, okay? And that you have the ability to summon help, a panic button, a charged phone, as Brad said. There's no need to take extreme measures or to panic. And I think that's just the fundamental message. So in closing, I mean, I really feel blessed to be part of Kappa. I feel blessed to work with the amazing team that we have at our disposal. We're fully committed to the safety and security of all in our communities. And with God's help, we'll carry out this mission regardless of the obstacles that we face.
Thank you so much, Sean. Once again, I think what we are hearing so many positive messages coming through. Nobody's trying to, I don't think anybody here is trying to sugarcoat what is a very, very difficult situation for all of us. But I'm hearing the consistent message coming through that at this point, we're getting resources in place, our own areas, and all of these wild rumors that have been going around that suggest that our next door neighbors and our next door shopping centers have been set alight, have been put to bed. And I really appreciate the kind of information and the way that you've presented it. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Vice President of the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, somebody who is really very familiar and has tremendous insight into the security situation in our country. So it gives me great pleasure to call on Mr. Zev Pringle to address us.
First of all, thanks so much, and especially to Karen, who pushed this whole idea, got these unbelievable speakers. Also, a big well done to Wendy and the other board members. I think the Board of Deputies is always there to harness the most incredible resources we have as a community. So a huge well done to Karen, to Professor Milner, and to her team. It was you did it from beginning to end. Yeah, so I've been doing 20 years to try and protect the South African Jewish community almost at all costs. We work very closely with state security, with the police, with other people. I will get on. I think Dr. Jan Berger gave a brilliant synopsis. I spoke a lot to Mo Sheikh today, who was intelligence most of his life. And really, there was a keg. It was the poverty, unemployment, social inequality, which has always been living with us for many years. On top of that, you had COVID, and on top of that, we were on level 4. There was a desperation, and then there was the match. The match was definitely President Jacob Zuma, who was arrested. When you ever think you can arrest an immediate president or immediate leader of a country and think there's going to be no political unrest or political violence, you're very naive. I think the Constitution held up unbelievably well. I think the police did unbelievably well. And many people have told me he would never be arrested, and the Constitution held it, and he went to jail. I do agree with the doctor that I think the police could be more proactive in those early stages. If there was a specific group of people involved that did ignite that flame, that allowed that spark to be the spark that is created now, criminality, looting, or many other things, I think that will come out, and I think everyone almost knows that will be the case. But for me, to be very brutal and honest, we've had horrific riots in America last year, which went across America. The New York City was a no-go zone. I mean, the amount of Gucci watches, Louis Vuitton bags, Rolexes that were smashed and broken for 5 days, you couldn't go in. Paris went to a standstill with the riots for over 5 weeks, where no one could get in. So this is what happens when democracy is threatened. I do believe our constitutional democracy has held at this stage. What happens in the next couple of weeks, we'll have to wait and see. but we are in political unrest. You mustn't kid yourself that we're in a rosy situation. I think KZN, Durban, Pietermaritzburg is a lot more complicated than Johannesburg, and that's for another discussion. I'm happy to have that discussion offline, but KZN, there's still a couple of days. State security and the government and the president are very determined to try and get the route, the artery back open to Gauteng. The other provinces are not catching on. Gauteng did almost ignite. We would like to believe it's not going to. Coming back to our previous speakers, which I've now done every morning as a who flies helicopters. Now we fly around Joburg every morning to really see what's real and not, and we'll be doing it for the next 3-4 days. So I'm happy to talk on the KFM or any other situation, but it's been very calm today. Yesterday was tense. The army has come in. I do believe the government's response maybe was a bit late, and that can also be debated. But really, as a Jewish community, we're resilient. We've gone through much worse. It comes on the back of a very, very difficult 18 months to 2 years. But for me, the light is about we saw a constitution and a democracy being upheld at all costs, and this wouldn't have happened if the former president was arrested. If he wasn't arrested, this wouldn't have happened. You can agree with him being arrested or not, but that was the court of law. We can agree with the courts and we can disagree with it, but we have to obey them. And the government obeyed it, and it has caused a lot of complexities. I do think going forward, it's a volcano that has exploded, and now the lava is coming out. It was a pressure cooker. You can't stop the volcano. You can't just put something on it. You don't think if you send 50,000 troops, it's going to take time to explode and time to settle. And then what are we going to have afterwards? And what are we as a community going to do to try and help the inequalities, help the unemployment, make this country better for all? So we are concerned. Everyone's concerned for their own safeties. As we've all said, don't relax, don't panic yet. The government is more in charge than we realize. We saw this with Fees Must Fall. We saw this with xenophobia. It starts on one issue and it goes to many others, and the criminals come on board. So we in a complex scenario. I am very confident that Gauteng should hold. We'll know in the next 24 to 48 hours. I think the other provinces will hold. And then I think KZN's it's a volcano that's still spewing out a lot of issues that will hopefully come under control in the next 48 hours. Please don't panic. Really, to have a CAP, a CSO, and of course the Board of Deputies, we're looking after you all the time. When most people are at home just watching the WhatsApps, we're all out there trying to make sure that every person on this call, Jewish and non-Jewish, is protected and safe and has a future in South Africa. I do believe there's an unbelievable future. I think we were coming right. Our rand was getting better. We were starting to come out of the second wave. Our vaccine rollouts were starting to happen. And it's I do feel like we're in the ring with Mike Tyson at the moment. And please God, the bells are either going to ring or he's going to give up. But we do need a break. And we hopefully the rabbi will be the last one to talk. Will help us with the break, and hopefully Hashem will give us a break. But it's a very tough period. But I don't think it's crisis. I think the community has been in much more difficult situations. I think South Africa has been on much more teetering situation. I was in Peace Corps in the early 90s. When Chris Hani was killed, this country could have gone horribly wrong. 76, it could have gone horribly wrong. In the 80s, under P.W. Botha and state emergency, have gone horribly wrong. So don't panic yet. And I do believe in the next 3-4 days, things will calm down. And just a well done to the community, well done to Professor Karen Milner. And also we have to do well done to our democratically elected president. I mean, we are having a bit of an issue on other issues with the Middle East conflict. But I do believe on this thing. Some people have said he should have been spoken harder. But he did talk like a grandfather, and now being told to stop by the chairperson. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dev. I'm sorry for interrupting you because I think that what you had to say was remarkable. and always, as always, so reassuring. Not to say, we're not in an area of concern, but really to frame it in a way that is contextualized, that is useful, and that speaks really to the facts on the ground rather than to the alarmist messages that we've been seeing. So thank you so much. I also want to let people know, for those who haven't got the chat open, that Dr. Berger has graciously responded to many of the questions with a very long answer there. So I just want to alert people to the fact that he has answered some of the questions. So for those of you who would like to open the chat, and right at the bottom of the chat, you'll see Dr. Berger's responses. Which brings us to very much the last, but very, very much not least. I did love the way Zev ended with what did you say, Zev? That we're in a battle with Mike Tyson, and please God it'll be over soon. So on the please God it'll be over soon note, I'm going to introduce Rabbi David Shaw. Rabbi Shaw is both a South African Jewish Board of Deputies member as well as the Rabbi of the Santon Shul, who has always, in my experience, managed to provide very wise words in difficult times. So over to you, Rabbi Shaw.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much to all the fellow panelists. You know, this concept of fight or flight, the two Fs, refers to two options that an animal faces when threatened in some way. In about 1915, there was a scientist who worked out, his name was Walter Cannon. And he basically just said, that human beings, we behave in the same way. When the adrenaline hits the system, it's fight or it's flight. And those are the two Fs which are pushed for almost 100 years until very recently, when a research scientist in psychology came up and said, that really this fight or flight, the two Fs are really, the inhuman responses are really very oversimplistic. And in fact, then he went on to add another few Fs to his list, which are a little bit simplistic as well, but they really make much more sense. Fight and flight, yes, but there's a freeze, not doing anything when you're confronted with some danger, flooding when the emotions just completely take over, fawning when you actually just capitulate to whatever's threatening you at the time, whatever's making you feel threatened. And fatigue is when you're just you just sleep, and there's nothing else you can do in response to any threat. So I think that there is a seventh F, which I think that we could all learn from, and it's really based on a Sfat Emet, one of the great rabbis a few generations back. And he said as follows, and let me just get to the essence of it. He said the seventh F is the F of faith, my friends. And that is we've been through so much. You just heard Zev, heard everybody. We've gone through so many things before, and we have faced them. And yes, sometimes we get bruised, and sometimes, yes, we even take out the Mike Tysons in the ring, and we're able to do that with a little bit of faith. There's a psalm, and it's indeed my favorite psalm, and that's Psalm number 91. Have a look at it if you get a chance. And there's something fascinating about Psalm 91. You'll notice that of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, every single one of those letters appears in that psalm. It's a psalm with a few verses, a little bit long, beautiful Psalm 91. Plenty blessings in the psalm, which I'd like to bless us all with. May the angels go with you and protect you wherever you are, whatever you are doing, in every situation that you are. But there's one letter of the Hebrew alphabet, of the 22 letters, 21 appear, but one letter doesn't appear in that psalm anywhere. And that letter is the letter Zion, the seventh letter in the alphabet. And I heard actually from the Chazan of Mashul. And he explained, and he said that he heard from an Adam Gadol, from a big man, a great man, that the reason why the Zion doesn't appear is because Zion, when you translate that word into Hebrew, means a weapon. And this psalm is the psalm of our faith. It's the psalm of our belief. It is the psalm where we express that we are in the hands of our Father in heaven, of the Holy One, blessed be He. And at the end of the day, we need to know that the greatest weapon we have is not the weapons that you're running around with, not sticks that people wield, not guns. But the greatest weapon that we have in our quiver of weapons is indeed our faith. And I think that that's very important for everybody to know, no matter what your faith is, no matter where you're coming from. You know, people often wonder whether they should look at the glass and see the glass is half empty or the glass is half full. And I think in line with what everybody's been saying before me, I think that we miss the point a little bit. And that really the glass is refillable wherever the status is or whatever its status is. And that, yes, we will make it better. We will make it better. And my blessing, I guess, for all of us is that things come right quickly. And with a little bit of faith, maybe it'll come sooner than we think now. To all the panelists, thank you so much. To everybody, I wish you a good evening. God bless.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Sure, I think we all happy and we can certainly all do with all the blessings that we can get. So thank you so much, and thank you for your message of that and it's a message of resilience, and it's a message that I think every single person on this call has spoken about. I'm seeing a lot of the comments in the Q&A and in the chat. I think that people are angry and anxious and puzzled at some of the responses. Hopefully some of the puzzlement has been a little bit addressed by some of the things that people have said. But I also think that while taking care of ourselves and being safe, we always need to look to our resilience, to the fact that we've come through these kind of things before, and to the rebuilding. We're in the process of destruction right now, but a process of destruction cannot end there. And we look forward as we're going forward into a process of rebuilding. A couple of people have mentioned the importance of going forward. We build trust, we build community within our own community, and we build community across communities. And that really the best way of ensuring that this, please God, we'll all get through this safely, but the best way of ensuring that this doesn't happen again, or that doesn't happen too frequently, is to build a strong, democratic and equal society in South Africa. So I'm going to leave us on those words. I'm aware that there are a lot of questions. I hope some of them have been answered. I'm really hoping that this in a week's time, we will not have to have praying that in a week's time, we will not have to have a further webinar, but we'll keep the questions. We'll see if we can find forums to respond. I'd also like to suggest, particularly given the anxiety and waste of resources and all the problems that that false news presents, we are going to put together, I know that the CSO is doing something on it, I know that CAP does something on it, and certainly as the Jewish Board of Deputies, we'd also like to become involved and partner with these organizations to getting out timeless updates all the time, so that we can be empowered by the information of knowing what's happening, what's valid, what's real, as strongly as possible. So keep an eye on our website so that we can pass that information through as quickly as we can get it. Thank you all very much. And thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you. And I have managed to keep it within, even if it did mean keeping some of us quiet, managed to keep it within the hour. Thank you all very much.
Well done, Karen, and thank you to you and the board for all the great work that you guys are doing.